Is the Ryne Sandberg game, as it's called, is that a memory up there with the night game?
The Bruce Sutter game.
Oh, you call it the Bruce Sutter game. Interesting.
I'm the only one in the world that calls it the Bruce Sutter game. How would that I walk? Hey, how about the Ryne Sandberg game? I mean, that's me. I mean, why would I? The Bruce Sutter game?
Yeah, you can't say the me
No, that's
game.
right.
That would sound bad.
No, the me game. What was your question? The
I mean,
highlight?
is that, yeah, like when you think back, what are the most vivid memories?
1984, June 23rd. My number, Yosh Kawana was right. Wasn't June 14th. It was June 23rd, 1984. Half a game out of first place. St. Louis Cardinals in town. Always a big deal with the Cardinals, Cubs fans. We got word just before the game started that the main game of Saturday Game of the Week with Gary Giola and Vin Scully was rained out. We are now going to be watched nationally as the Game of the Week with Tony Kubek and Bob Costas. Game of the Week, big deal to the players. The players would call that the Game of the World. So we're playing the Cardinals. Steve Trout, who today I see at the Cubs convention and around Wrigley Field, always gives himself credit for the Bruce Sutter game, but he calls it the Sandberg game because he started that game, and after the second or third inning, he's losing 8-0, and he was pulled at that point, so he got that game rolling, down 8-0. Cubs come back. It was a seesaw game. The Saturday Game of the Week, commercials are getting ready to go off air. There's 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. I'm up. Bruce Sutter on the mound, dominant ground ball pitcher, almost untouchable to hit the air, but maybe sneak a ball through the infield for a base hit at the time because his ball drops about this much. But I was one of those guys that played wiffle ball in the front yard, and that ball was always dropping about this much or rising that much. So I stepped in there, and as I was in there, Willie McGee was just named the player of the game who hit for the cycle for the Cardinals. We were losing by 1 run, and there was 2 outs. I had a strike on me. The next pitch was a drive to left center, out of here for a home run, tie game. They stopped the credits that are going on the screen over my at-bat. The producer, the director, would like to thank them. Wait a minute, we don't want to thank them yet. Wait, the game's not over. So we stopped that. 2 innings later, Bruce Sutter's still in there, as closers did. If they blew a save, they'd stay in there and try and get a win back in the day. 2 innings later, 2 outs. Man on first, we're down 2 runs at the time. Similar scenario with winding down here with the game, producer, director. Second pitch, once again, 2-run home run off of Bruce Sutter to tie the game once again. Bob Costas today thanks me for that game on how his career kind of jumped to a different level because everybody was watching and the way that he called it. So that was great. So ended up the day 5 for 6, 7 RBIs, 2 home runs against Bruce Sutter. Most importantly, the Cubs go into first place for the first time in '84, June 23rd, into first place. Dennis Eckersley that was his first game in a Cubs uniform in a Cubs dugout, coming over from Boston, another historic ballpark, which he thought was magical. After that game, he tells me later on that he was driving home, just leaving with his wife. He goes, "Could you believe that game?" And then he asked one of the teammates in the locker room, "Wow, is every game like this at Wrigley Field?" So Eckersley got a big kick out of that. And as it goes on, Whitey Herzog, after the game, I could just see him sitting in his chair with the Chicago media, and somebody asked, "What did you think about Sandberg's performance?" I think would have been the question. That's what I would imagine. Right. And as a manager that just lost a game like that, in a race like that, they're at the top also, with a very sarcastic answer, I would say, "Are you kidding me? He's the best player I've ever seen. He's Baby Ruth." So I actually read that the next day in the paper, and I looked at that, and then there's a little bit of a cold sweat come down because I have a game that day against the same manager. It was Herzog against the Cardinals in front of the same fans. I felt like I had to live up to that game the rest of the year, which I actually, in a lot of ways, did. Ended up with the MVP. The Cubs go to the playoffs. Good postseason, hitting just under 400 that year. And so that was one game that lifted my career to a whole nother level. And there was times that I've given a talk like this, and sometimes it comes to me, what if I'd have gone in that day and said, you know what, what if I'd have been given the day off that day? What if the manager the day before would have said, hey Rhino, you played a lot of games. I averaged about 158 games a year, by the way, and they looked for about 4 games a year to give me a day off. What if they just said, sit out tomorrow, it's a Saturday, and that game would not have happened.
The fans would have revolted, I think is what would have.
All in all, I think it's a terrific game. Wrigley Field's packed every day. The atmosphere is off the charts. What ownership is doing, led by Tom Ricketts, and then on the field with Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer, Joe Madden, and the players, off the charts. I think it's fantastic. I like what they're doing around Wrigley Field as a little Wrigley town now, where you can spend the whole day there. You can get up in the morning, you can go to Wrigley Field, have breakfast, and have dinner there at 8 o'clock at night and be very happy about that. So I think it's awesome. It's great to be the ambassador of the Cubs and to watch these guys play. And the biggest thing in 2016, which I wear the ring to events, is I don't have to answer the fans after 1984 up until 2016. When I'd meet a group like this, the first question, or if I left here and I met the parking attendant, what they would ask for after 84 to, how many years is that? 85 to 15. 30 years. One of the most common questions I'd get, are the Cubs ever going to get to a World Series? And they're going to win a World Series. I did not get asked that since 16. Appreciate that.
Perfect. Did you guys know that he auditioned briefly to do the bullpen dance for the Cubs? Did anybody see the video on that? Ryne Sandberg knows how to floss, just like my 10-year-old daughter.
I have 8 grandkids. I mean, why wouldn't I? So when you have 8 grandkids and the oldest is 10, and you go to these Little League games, and one of your grandkids or their teammates or opponents now hits a single, hits a double, and they do the floss on base. Now, back in my day, I'm old school. I mean, that calls for a little chin music. Next time I'm a Little Leaguer. But I'm 58 years old. I've adjusted to the times. So now I went home, I Googled the floss, got in front of the mirror for about 10 minutes, and so I got it down.
It does take 10 minutes to run. Oh. Let's go. We need more drinks. Maybe at the end. Here we go. Would your grandkids be impressed or horrified?
Very impressed.
They'd be impressed. Good.
No, very impressed.
Yeah.
No.
I'm impressed. I have tried
I'm horrified,
and failed.
but they're impressed.
These guys were impressed as well.